when I was in the office, it was run, run, run all day long. I remember my husband looking at my calendar one time and he just started laughing and he's like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Well, that's my day. Like, what's funny about it? Like that's how every day was, just back to back to back." And he was like, "How do you ever get anything done?" I'm like, "Well, I don't. Like that's what happens at night, right? Like after everybody's asleep, like that's when the work gets done."
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Eternal Optimist Podcast, where I'm your host, Matt Drinkon. And today we have a special guest, another amazing guest who is one of the leaders in Go Abundance Women, in addition to running her consulting firm and just being an overall Yukon Husky fan and dog lover and badass in life in general. I hope I can say badass. It's my show. I can say whatever I want to. And she's already been fun to talk to and runs a thriving business. So I hope we're going to learn a lot from her today. Welcome my guest for the day, Miss. I almost read the person who referred you. I almost read Mandy's name over here. This is Miss Cheryl Heller. Cheryl, welcome to the show.
Matt, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and talk to you today.
Heck yeah. It's going to be a good conversation. You come highly recommended. When I asked Mandy McAllister for a recommendation, she said, "Oh, have you met Cheryl Heller? You've got to. She's the best." So I'm excited to meet with you today. And to kick things off, can you give our audience some context? Who is Cheryl Heller?
So, like you mentioned, I have a lot going on. I am a Yukon Husky, and go bleed blue. And
yes.
I have been in Maryland since I graduated from college, practically just outside DC. And I love dogs. I have 2 rescue dogs of my own. And I also have a daughter who is just out of college. So it's very exciting to see her, grow up and take on the world herself. And my husband as well, who is, pursuing his own career and doing all kinds of crazy and great things as well. From a professional standpoint, I spent the first probably 20 plus years of my career in large companies, big names that you would recognize, doing the whole corporate thing, climbing the corporate ladder. And for the past almost 7 years, I've had my own business consulting with small businesses and startups, doing fractional CFO work and strategic advisory.
Wow. I mean, I cannot wait to talk with you. This is such a needed lens in the life of a business owner. And I'm hoping that we can talk a little bit about helping business owners kind of understand a little bit about reading the financials, seeing the story that the financials paint. I come across so many owners that they focus just on top line revenue or the last number of the profit, but a lot of the numbers in the middle, they don't understand or even read those. So yeah, looking forward to picking your brain on that.
Yep. That's a lot. A lot of what I spend my time on is exactly that.
Oh, awesome. Well, personally, you mentioned your husband and the dogs. How did you and your husband meet? What's the origin story of this team?
So this is a good story. So we were in college together and I didn't know him, but I knew a lot of his fraternity brothers. Okay. And he was interested in a friend of mine who lived on my hall in the dorm, but she was interested in one of his fraternity brothers. And so she thought, hey, I'll introduce these 2 and get him, off my back. And then I'll be able to date his friend. So that's what happened. And, the rest is history. So we've been together since, junior year in college. We've been together longer than we haven't.
Oh, I love that. That is the sign that we are in the phase of life where we have accrued some wisdom. Are we going to use it? And we can say that we've been with our partner for longer than we haven't. I've been out of college longer than I wasn't. Wait a second. Yeah, that was more than half a life ago. So cool. But I never would have guessed that, by the way, because maybe it's something about Go Abundance women in general have this vitality in life, because I never would have guessed you have a grown child. I would have guessed yours are the same age as mine. So that's supposed to be some kind of a compliment. So good. So origin story complete. Good. Well, let's get to the meat. I love to ask the same very challenging question to everyone. And the question, Cheryl, is what's the most challenging thing in your life you've ever had to endure or overcome? And I'll let you take it in any direction you like.
So, there's probably a couple stories I could tell, but the one that comes to mind is my daughter, who I mentioned, who she's out of college now. When she was about 8 or 9 years old, she was having a tough time, a lot of anxiety, started talking about, threatening self harm. And it was, really challenging because I didn't know how to deal with that. I had just
Yeah.
assumed that she was going to be just like me, where she just put her head down, she did her schoolwork, she got the good grades, went to college, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it didn't turn out that way. And so I remember one time she was supposed to go on a field trip with school, and she was threatening that if we made her go on the field trip, she was going to break her arm. And luckily she had such a supportive environment at school. We went into school, we talked to the counselor at school. They connected us with a therapist who was just a lifesaver, who was with my daughter until she retired just a year or two ago, and has just helped us, both my daughter as well as my husband and myself, learn about how to manage anxiety, how to overcome it, how to access the resources that we needed to help her be the best person, the best self she could be, and to really sort of leverage her gifts and talents and not let this, life altering thing kind of take over and take her out of her sort of normal growth trajectory of her life. And I think, in seeing her now, and it's not that there isn't anxiety, because anxiety will be here, forever, but she has learned the tools to manage it. She is, successful. She's only been out of college for a year, but she's super successful already in her career. She has a strong mind and kind of thinks for herself and knows what her boundaries are. Like, she is the one who taught me about setting boundaries. And she's very clear about when she needs the, time away, when she needs the space just to, have to herself, versus, filling up her schedule and doing all the things. And the other thing she's taught me is patience, and really sort of understanding, and not just, go, 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 go all the time, but really understanding what other people are dealing with, and thinking about, it's kind of changed my whole perspective on how I interact with people. And just, you can never assume that there's not a story behind the
Mm-hmm.
way somebody's acting.
Hmm.
There's always a story. You never know what's going on with the individual. And, I'm able to take that into account in all of my interactions. If somebody gets on the phone with me and they're frustrated or yelling at me, I'm like, you know what? 99% of the time, it's not about me. It's about something going on in their life. And so
Yes.
it allows me to give them much more grace than just reacting.
Hmm. I certainly relate to what you're talking about with the kids being amazing teachers. And I think that
Mhm.
my children have brought out in me the ability to, it's definitely strengthened my empathy. Your story reminds me of Stephen Covey's third habit: seek first to understand, then be understood. And that's like one of the big principles in our coaching practice. We talk about all the time. And I'm able to do that in business. I wasn't doing it at home as much. And my daughters
Mhm.
taught me that. So I'm grateful that you can share this story, and also grateful that you have also taken some learning lessons yourself of how to manage and overcome anxiety and do it as a parent. So this is really cool to hear. I wonder, how did you get through that yourself? Because you're managing a corporate career, you're married, you've got your own stuff, and now your daughter is having these types of emotional issues younger, and you're through it now. But what was that like to just for you to manage that in that time? What was your emotional state like around that time?
Yeah. So I don't know that I ever gave myself the time to process that. So
Okay.
I was just, I grew up in an environment that was just like, put your head down, do the work, and get through the day and get up and do it all over again tomorrow. And so that was sort of the mentality with which how I went through my day.
Okay.
And when I was with her, I would try my best to be that more sort of patient, laid back self, because I knew that it was not going to get her to do her chores or her schoolwork or anything any better or faster if I brought that stress to her.
Yeah.
But then the second I was not in her environment, I just went back on, put your head down, do the work, get it done. And so it took me a while to sort of get past that. And I think when it all, we got her to the end of high school, we knew she was going to college, and I had the opportunity to leave my corporate job. And everybody's like, well, what are you going to do now? I'm like, I don't know. I just need a little bit of a detox. And it allowed me to take a little bit of a break, which I don't think I could have put the words to it at the time. But
Yeah.
now looking back, I would definitely say I went through a phase of burnout.
Okay.
Because, when I was in the office, it was run, run, run all day long. I remember my husband looking at my calendar one time, and he just started laughing, and he's like, what is that? I'm like, well, that's my day. Like, what's funny about it? Like that's how every day was, just back to back to back. And he was like, how do you ever get anything done? I'm like, well, I don't. Like that's what happens at night, right? Like after
Yeah.
everybody's asleep, like that's when the work gets done. And I thought that was normal. And then slowly came to realize that, it might be normal in some environments, but it really isn't normal for sort of a healthy, balanced life. And
Yeah.
so going through that detox period, it coincided with the time where my daughter was graduating from high school. And so I was able to spend more time with her like right before she went off to college, and really enjoy that period of time. And gave me a different perspective. I was able to, get up at a reasonable hour, get my workout in, walk the dogs, not rush through things, but still able to get work done and be productive throughout the day.
Yeah. Well, before the detox period, you crushed it for 20 years straight in corporate America. Did you just phase out and not have the workout program and not have any of that time for you? Or was it just wake up, coffee, go? I mean, what was different then and then after this detox period? Because I think a lot of people can relate to
Mhm.
that, just going in the burnout mode all day, every day, and then they crack or break or something's got to change. And you have given us a roadmap here of your detox period into where you are now. So I'm curious what it was and then what it's become.
Yeah. So I would say that it was lots of caffeine,
Okay.
um, not a whole lot of sleep, and it's sort of living kind of on the edge of like almost always being sick, like almost like right before you feel like you're getting sick, like you kind of always feel like that because you're not getting the right nutrition, you're not getting enough sleep, you're not getting the exercise. On the days that I was getting the exercise, I would be up, 4:30, 5 o'clock to get the exercise in before the day started, because if I didn't do it then, it wasn't going to get done. Because then the day just kept going, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
it would get to the evening, and then I was exhausted. I'm like, I'm not going to do that now, right? And so and that was kind of the routine, and then the weekend would be like just exhaustion and trying to clean up around the house, but not really in a productive way.
Mm.
And I would say after that detox period, I am, exercising quite regularly, usually 6 days a week. I am getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. I am more focused on healthy eating that, helps to get me through the day. Like I definitely notice if there's a week where we haven't been able to get to the grocery store and get the right foods, then during
Yes.
that week, I can feel myself not having the right nutrition. And so, but then I can make time in the middle of the week to say, you know what, I'm just going to go, I'm going to get the right stuff because I know that that's what I need. And really focus on all of those things that are the fuel to kind of, keep you going.
Hmm. Well, that is a nice from to growth story. And you start with a personal lens. You started with your daughter, and thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. That's a great place to start, because I'd like to ask you about the transition from 20 years in corporate, detox
Mhm.
period, and then you started your own business. That's a bold move to start your own business anytime, but to do it after 20 years of successful corporate. Can you talk us a little bit about that? Like, what was that like for you? Did you kind of sit on the bench for a while and struggle with it? Or was it, you know what, I'm just super motivated? I mean, can you walk us through your mindset and the actions that happened to start your business?
Yeah, so it wasn't really a conscious decision. It was during that period just after I had left corporate. And I was, I love real estate. And so I was kind of looking into real estate and wanted to invest in real estate. And then I had some friends and former colleagues call me and say, "Hey, I'm doing this kind of startup-y thing over here. I could really use some help. Do you have some time?" Or, folks might have gotten a new job at a different company that was a little bit smaller and said, "There's not really the infrastructure here to do, financial reporting and metrics and what we're supposed to be looking at. So could you come and spend some time here and help me figure out what we need to do?" And so I kind of fell into it and kind of grew from there and said, well, gosh, this working with smaller companies, working with startups, rolling up my sleeves, getting my hands dirty, it's kind of fun. And, it's creating this environment where the decisions that you're making can have a very real, very quick impact on the company and the people that you're working with, as
Yeah.
opposed to when you're in a large corporation, you have to go through months of socialization and making sure everybody's okay with the decision before you can actually implement something. So, I really decided after a while that I liked that small company startup vibe. And so then after probably a year or two, that's really when I started to say, well, gosh, maybe I could do this thing sort of full time for the long term. And, because when I started, I was like, oh, yeah, I'll do this consulting thing. It'll be kind of an interim, while I'm looking for another job. And, it got to the point where I had gone through a couple of interview processes and we'd get sort of toward the end, and I might be one of the last two or three people there. And I'd start thinking, well, I don't know that I want to go back to that. I kind of like what I'm doing now. And after being in that situation two or three times, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna this is it. I'm all in. This is the
Wow.
way that I'm going. And then it's just kind of grown from there.
Wow. Okay. So you find yourself with a special set of skills, not like Liam Neeson in Taken, not those kind of skills, but a special set of skills. And after a couple of reinforcing conversations, you said, I'm all in, I'm doing this. And today, I think you said 7 years in to running your own business. What what does a day look like for you now? Because it used to look like meeting after meeting packed all day with no time for anything. So what is a day in the life of entrepreneur and fractional CFO leader? What might that look like nowadays?
Yeah. So I work with only a handful of clients at a time because my philosophy on being a fractional CFO is that I don't just want to show up and read you your financial statements. I want to get in and understand the business, and I want to be that partner for you as the CEO, founder, business owner. And so I usually spend anywhere from on the low end 3 to 4 hours a week to on the high end a day and a half with my clients a week. And so it's really pivoting depending on the client and the stage of the client as to what we're going to do that week. So
Mhm.
I have clients ranging from they've just incorporated themselves and they've just opened their bank account, and they need to put together their, pitch materials, their product and marketing materials. They need to talk to investors. And so that is a little bit more of, guidance and lots of conversations and lots of sort of strategizing about what the right way to have the conversations with the external parties is, and how are we going to present the company and the founders in the best light. And then I have clients that have been in business for 20 years, and that is more about refining their business. How are they going to make it to the next level? What's the next sort of transformative thing that they can do? How do they make sure that they have the right team in place to take the company where they want to go? And that might be, looking at longer term investments, sort of strategic or capital investments that they might want to make in the business. It might mean, understanding the sort of second layer of the team and who's there and who's in the right position from a succession planning perspective. To maybe they haven't even had to do things like KPIs in the past because the business is just sort of, gone well on its own, but maybe that's no longer good enough for them. Maybe they really want to take it to the next level. And so let's start putting the right KPIs in place to measure what's going on so that we can figure out where to focus. So it really all depends on what the stage of their evolution the client is in, and what's going on at that particular point in time.
Something that it's coming to me now as myself being a business coach, not a fractional CFO. It's not where we focus. It's a smaller part of what I do. But I feel that many owners that I've been privileged to serve, it's a point of embarrassment, really. Some of it's guilt, some of it's shame. It's a point that I go in there and start asking, can I see the profit loss statement, or can I see the balance sheet, income statement, any document that shows the numbers and how the business operates on paper? And there's an overwhelming majority that don't have that. Yeah. And I wonder,
well,
what your experience is when you walk into someone's office for the first time. Like, what's the most common challenge you might see with someone who has been in business for a decade or more? What are you seeing on your end?
Yeah, so I definitely hear that the fear and shame coming through. Sometimes where folks just they don't want to look at it because they're afraid it might say something bad, or they don't want to look at it because they're not sure that they would know what to do with the information even if they had it. And so that almost like guilt around I'm the business owner, I'm the person in charge, yet I don't know how to react to this data that I'm being given. Yeah. And so, my philosophy and way I approach it is, okay, let's just start from where we are today. Let's just look at the numbers where they are today.
Okay.
Let's not worry about what happened in the past or what you did or didn't do or should have done or wanted to do that you didn't get to. But let's look at where the numbers are today, and let's set up a plan. We're going to put a plan in place. We're going to talk about your numbers on a regular basis. We're going to look at them, at least once a month, if not more, depending on the business and what's going on in the business. We're going to put those KPIs in place, and then we're going to start seeing what is it that we need to do to chase those KPIs, to chase those goals that you have. So how can we use the data to help you make better decisions about where you're going to spend your time each day?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the way that you just did that. How do you do that in such a way that, respects them or shows them that there's a lack of judgment from you? Mm-hmm. How do you make it accessible for someone who maybe is hiding this or is embarrassed about it?
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting point too, because, as we were talking about before we started recording, as I look at new clients, it's not like people will randomly find me, and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to like open up to you with my, the life story of my business and show you my, all of my finances, especially if they're in that position where they have this shame, guilt, or fear around it, right? And so, A lot of times when I work with a new client, it's because there is a connection. I've been referred, by somebody I know or by a friend of a friend. And so there's a little bit more, there's a little bit of baseline trust there
Yep.
to begin with. And I think that's so important because otherwise, I'm not going to get the full story and I'm not going to be able to help them in the best way. And so I have a very sort of no judgment mentality, right? Like they've
Okay.
been running this business, the business is profitable, the business is making money. They know what they're doing from a business product customer perspective, right? And that, I have a lot of respect for that. There are a lot of people that just, know a lot about their own industry and that I don't have that kind of knowledge. And so it's sort of this, balancing of, help me learn about your business and what you do well. And I'll help you learn about the things that I know. And then, together we'll sort of be able to make the best decisions for your company going forward because you know the history of your clients, you know your product, you know what works for your clients. And I can help with the understanding of the financials and, helping you figure out how to take those numbers and use them to make better decisions for your clients.
Outstanding. Well, can you give us an example? I'm not asking for names. It could be anonymous, but can you give us an example of a client engagement that you've had where you came in and maybe share what the problem is that they thought they had, and then just kind of share and walk through what did you do to help them and where they are now? Any example like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I have a client that's been in business for a while, and they were finding that they got most of their business from the owner's connection, the CEO's connections. And so they felt like they were doing fine, but they were missing a lot of the market, right? Because they weren't doing the marketing. They had never really had to do business development. They were just there getting referrals, basically.
Okay.
And so when I came and started working with them, they really wanted to kind of break away from that and create a structure where we would have a business development arm that would go out and get new clients that may or may not have any sort of connection to the owner. And so one of the first things we did was we looked at their metrics that they were measuring on a day-to-day basis and really sort of up-leveled their game with respect to those metrics. And we are not only looking at financial metrics, but we're also looking at their marketing and business development metrics. So how many marketing qualified leads are they getting on a weekly basis? How many sales
Okay.
qualified leads are they getting on a weekly basis? How long does a prospect sit in their pipeline between when it enters the pipeline and when the deal is closed? What's their average deal size? And by being able to look at all of those metrics in conjunction with one another, we've been able to reprice the products. We've been able to create bundled products, and we've been able to
Wow.
access a new part of the market that we weren't previously able to access. And so now, they're really looking to grow and transform into that next level, having all of that data behind us. And, at first it was a little bit frustrating because if you're not tracking the data, it takes a while to get the data together, right? And you have to sort of
Yeah.
see the data over time. You have to see these trends. And so for the first 6 months or so, we were tracking the data, but there wasn't really yet anything that we could say about it or do with it because we didn't have quite enough. And now we're at the point where, we have a good sort of trend line of that data, and we're using it to make decisions about the future.
So there it is, ladies and gentlemen, to take them from don't want to look at the metrics, maybe a little bit of nerves or maybe some embarrassment around it, and then to put it to a place where, yes, we're tracking them and we're tracking them weekly and they're crystal clear and doing all that
Mhm.
with no judgment. That is the level of professionalism that we get when we get the opportunity to work with Cheryl Heller. So thank you, Cheryl. That was very insightful. Is there anything else that you want to share about the business that I haven't asked yet? Anything else on your mind to share?
Well, yeah, I think there's that. It's always important to look at your financials, but I also see myself much more as a not just the CFO, but a strategic advisor. And so, with
Yeah.
some of my clients, I'll work with them on, thinking about their team and how are we coaching and developing the team, and what are the different areas that the team needs to be developed in order for them to grow within the business, or looking at the product and are we getting the right product market fit? And so really having that broad viewpoint, just a sounding board, because I find too that sometimes CEOs, even of small businesses, like they don't have a big peer group where they can go and talk to about these, things that may or may not be going well, or they are not sure how to address. And so, really providing that sounding board where they can kind of just be themselves and ask for help and get that question off their chest. I feel like that is a lot of what I do as well. And it's not just about the numbers and the data. It's about, helping that CEO run their business in the best possible way.
And I love everything I've just heard. And it's interesting to me because as someone else who's an executive coach who serves people, a little different lens, still we both serve
Mhm.
people to grow and scale their business. And when I hear you share, it's non-judgmental. We go in there and try to understand by being with them, immerse ourselves with them and understand where they are. And we do that hours per week or sometimes days per week to really get to know them. And then to track and measure for some of them KPIs for the first time, but track and measure that, and to be a sounding board, a confidant. That sounds eerily similar to what I do, except for you're the specialist with being a CFO. So I love your methodology. It really relates to what I do too. So I think it's brilliant. So I want to appreciate you for that. And I like to ask, where do we find you more? Like, where can our audience go right now and follow you, connect with you, learn with you?
Yeah, so I have actually a little gift that your audience can get access to, and then that will get them connected to me. So one of
Awesome.
the things, like we've been talking about, is this fear of finances, and some of it is just knowledge, right? So I put together this document that shows 30 terms that you need to know about finances, and so if they go to 30terms.com, they can get access to that list. So it's demystifying that financial jargon, and really just giving them that underlying knowledge so that they have a vocabulary that they can talk about their financials with.
Uh, I love the way you're making it easy for us to do a little self study in advance of reaching out to you. Because I know I have a friend, Justin Donald, who runs a lifestyle investor mastermind, and he wrote a book at all these very
Mm-hmm.
specific financial terms. And, so I read that. I'd never heard of half of them. And I felt more comfortable studying at home first before showing I didn't know anything to this, friend and
Mm-hmm.
mentor of mine. So I'm so glad that we can go. It's 30, the number
30.
30terms.com
Mm-hmm.
is where we can go. And is there a social media place as well? Or should we just start at 30 terms?
Yeah, well, you can connect with me on social media. It's Cheryl A. Heller on LinkedIn and Instagram.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic. Well, Cheryl, it's been good to hear your story and hear what you do and just to hear some of the challenges you've had to endure and overcome. So much respect for your vulnerability and just thank you very much. I'd like to
Thank you.
kind of move us to the wrap up and ask you a couple lightning round questions. Uh, One of those, if you had to recommend between 1 and 3 books that have had an impact on you and your life, what might you recommend?
So I love Dan Sullivan's books, and I think in particular, Who Not How,
Yeah.
because I am sort of nobody else is going to do it better than me kind of person.
Yes.
But like that freedom of finding the right person to do it, and just letting go was like an eye opener for me. And the other one that I really love is Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week, because it really
Yeah.
changed my view on how to make money, how to grow wealth. It's more than just like having a 9 to 5.
And I am so glad you said those 2 books, because I have both those on my shelf. And Who Not How has been an absolute game changer in my world. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
one thing, a note for the listeners, one thing that's really served me from Who Not How is that now versus then, whenever I have a challenge, it used to be, how do I solve it? What do I got to do to get this done? And now it's, well, who can solve this for me? Who has the skills, the strength of my team to be able to solve this? So it's just a tiny shift, world of difference. So I'm glad you
Mm-hmm.
recommended that. And of course, Tim Ferriss, everything about him, he's done some good stuff. So thank you. About music. You come from a Yukon Husky background. Yeah, I mean, you've got championships in basketball up there all over the place. So I'm curious, what kind of music motivates you, inspires you, fills your cup?
Yeah, so I love pop music, but I also I have this playlist that I put together a while ago, and it's my like pump it up playlist. Like, you know how you're supposed to do the
Oh,
power poses, before
yeah.
you go someplace, and yeah. So this is kind of like my listening power pose, right? And it's songs like "Roar" by Katy Perry,
Yeah.
"Confident" by Demi Lovato. All there. It's just big. You can like belt it out in your car when you're driving to a meeting, or when you're kind of sitting in your house practicing your presentation. You kind of belt out those songs, and it really gives you a boost.
Yeah. Mine is Thunderstruck by AC/DC, and
Mm-hmm.
I get the girls listening to Queen in the car too, a little We Are the Champions type stuff. So every once in a while, my wife and I
Mm-hmm.
will rock out to Eye of the Tiger. So it's good. We've come to our last question, Cheryl, and I'll give you the last word of the day. You're on the Eternal Optimist podcast. When I say eternal optimist, what might that mean to you?
Wow, I think it means gratitude for all of the great things that have come and are about to come as you have an outlook on life. And it's really that the gratitude, the mindset of gratitude and optimism, I think, that will keep us pushing forward.